What happens when a talk show host decides to question whether a man's entire transformation from drug dealer to Grammy-nominated artist is nothing more than a carefully crafted marketing strategy? What you're about to witness is one of the most raw, emotional confrontations ever captured on daytime television. The moment when Jelly Roll, the tattooed giant from Antioch, Tennessee, was forced to defend not just his music, but his very right to redemption. The studio went cold. The audience held their breath. And Joy Behar discovered that some stories are written in scars too deep to be dismissed as branding. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this confrontation is about to change everything you think you know about second chances. The View studio buzzed with a different kind of energy that Tuesday morning. Word had spread through the audience that Jelly Roll was the guest, and the crowd was noticeably different from the usual daytime television demographic. There were women in their 40s and 50s wearing t-shirts with his lyrics. There were men who looked like they had driven through the night to be there. There were people with visible tattoos, people who carried the weight of hard lives in their eyes, people who had found something in this man's music that spoke to their own struggles. When Jelly Roll walked onto the set, the applause was thunderous, but also something more. It was personal. It was grateful. It was the sound of people who felt seen by someone who had walked the same dark roads they had. He was impossible to miss. 6 feet tall, over 300 pounds, tattoos covering his neck, his hands creeping up toward his face. His eyes swept across the audience, and he nodded, acknowledging faces he would never know but somehow understood. He settled into the guest chair, adjusting his weight, his tattooed hands briefly gripping the armrests before relaxing. Whoopi welcomed him warmly. Sarah Haynes smiled with genuine enthusiasm. The audience was still buzzing with energy, eager to hear from the man whose songs about addiction and redemption had become anthems for the broken. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, and before the applause had even fully died down, she fired the first shot. So, Jelly Roll, or should I call you Jason? Let me just cut right to it. You've got this whole redemption story that everyone loves, the drug dealer who found Jesus and country music. But I have to ask, how much of that is real, and how much is just a really good marketing angle for selling records to people who love a comeback story? The studio went cold. Whoopi's smile froze. Sarah Haynes looked down at her notes as if they might offer escape. And Jelly Roll, the man who had survived prison and addiction and the streets of Nashville, stared at Joy Behar with an expression that suggested she had just made a serious miscalculation. "I'm sorry," Jelly Roll said, his deep voice carrying that distinctive Tennessee drawl. "Did you just ask me if my life is a marketing angle?" "I'm asking if the story you're selling is the whole truth," Joy replied, leaning forward with that familiar prosecutorial edge. "Because it's very convenient, isn't it? The troubled past, the prison time, the drugs, and then the miraculous transformation through music and faith. It's almost too perfect, like someone sat down and designed the ideal narrative for reaching a certain demographic." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. The audience, many of whom had come specifically to see Jelly Roll, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Let me make sure I understand what you're asking me," Jelly Roll said slowly. "You're asking if I made up being a drug dealer, if I made up going to prison, if I made up being addicted to heroin and cocaine, if I made up watching friends die from overdoses? Is that what you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that the packaging of that story has been very strategic," Joy said. "And I wonder how much of the man we see on stage, crying during songs, talking about his daughter, praising Jesus, is genuine, and how much is performance." Jelly Roll was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to something quieter, but infinitely more dangerous. "You want to know what's genuine, Joy? I'll tell you what's genuine. I spent my 17th birthday in a juvenile detention center. That's genuine. I watched my best friend overdose on pills that I sold him. That's genuine. I missed the first 5 years of my daughter's life because I was either locked up or too high to be a father. That's genuine." His hands, covered in tattoos that told the story of his life, gripped the arms of the chair. "I've got felonies on my record that will follow me until the day I die. I can't vote. I can't own a firearm. There are countries I can't visit because of what I did when I was young and stupid and desperate. You think that's marketing? You think someone would choose this story if they had any other option?" Joy seemed momentarily taken aback by the intensity, but she pressed on. "But that's exactly my point. You've taken those experiences and turned them into a brand, the tattooed redemption singer, the voice for the broken. It's very lucrative, isn't it? Those arena tours aren't cheap." "No, they're not," Jelly Roll agreed. "And you know what I do with that money? I fund programs for addicts who can't afford treatment. I go into prisons and talk to kids who are making the same mistakes I made. I support families who've lost people to overdoses. Is that part of the brand too, Joy? Is that just marketing?" "I'm sure those are admirable efforts," Joy said with a dismissive wave. But they also generate very positive press, don't they? Every time you visit a prison, every time you talk about your past, it reinforces the narrative. It's hard to separate the genuine from the calculated. Let me tell you about the last prison I visited, Jelly Roll said, his voice dropping to something more personal. It was in Kentucky, maximum security. I sat in a room with 50 men who are never getting out. Men who have done things that society has decided are unforgivable. And I told them my story. I told them about the times I almost died, the times I wished I had, the moment I decided to change. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. One of those men came up to me after. He was maybe 60 years old, been locked up for 30 years. He grabbed my hand and he started crying. He said he'd given up hope a long time ago. But hearing that someone could come back from the darkness, it made him believe that maybe he could still become someone different, even if he never walked free again. His voice cracked. You think I did that for press, Joy? You think I sat in that room and shared my deepest shame with murderers and rapists for a good headline? I did it because I used to be them. Maybe not as far gone, but on the same path. And if nobody had reached down into my darkness and pulled me up, I'd be dead or locked up just like them. Jelly Roll stood up. At 6 feet tall and over 300 pounds, covered in tattoos from his neck to his fingers, he was an imposing presence. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled, almost gentle, which somehow made it more powerful. You want to see calculated? I'll show you calculated. Calculated is you sitting at this table with your questions already written, designed to get a reaction out of me. Calculated is bringing up my past, not because you care about addiction or recovery or second chances, but because controversy gets ratings. Calculated is questioning the sincerity of a man's faith because being skeptical makes you seem sophisticated. The counterattack landed with precision. Joy's face reddened. I'm doing my job as a journalist, she protested. Asking hard questions is what I'm supposed to do. Hard questions? Jelly Roll laughed, but there was no humor in it. Hard questions would be asking about the opioid crisis that's killing people in every town in America. Hard questions would be asking what we can do to help addicts get treatment instead of prison time. Hard questions would be asking why we throw people away instead of giving them a chance to change. He pointed at Joy, his fingers steady. What you're doing isn't asking hard questions. You're trying to tear down someone who's actually doing something about the problems you pretend to care about. You want to know why people connect with my music? Because I tell the truth. I tell the truth about addiction and pain and shame and the desperate hope that maybe, if you fight hard enough, you can become someone better than you were. Whoopi tried to intervene. I think maybe we should... No, Jelly Roll said firmly but not unkindly. I appreciate what you're trying to do, Whoopi, but I need to finish this, because this isn't just about me. This is about everyone out there who's fighting to change their life and being told by people like her that it's not possible, that it's not real, that redemption is just a marketing strategy. He turned back to Joy, and his voice dropped to something almost intimate. I've got a daughter, Joy. Her name's Bailey Ann. She's the reason I got clean, the reason I'm still alive. When she was little, she used to visit me in jail. Do you know what that does to a man? To see his child on the other side of that glass, knowing that he put himself there, knowing that he's failing her every single day? His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. I made her a promise that I would become someone she could be proud of. Not a promise to a record label, not a promise to fans, a promise to my daughter, looking in her eyes, swearing that her daddy was going to change. And I have spent every day since then trying to keep that promise. He looked out at the audience, and his voice grew stronger. My wife, Bunny, she knows everything about me, every terrible thing I've done, every person I've hurt, every lie I've told. She knows about the women, the drugs, the violence, all of it. And she chose to love me anyway. Not because she's naive or because she doesn't know the truth, because she believes that people can change. She's seen me change. She's been there for the hard nights when I wanted to use again, and she held me while I cried instead. His voice was thick with emotion now. That woman has stood by me through things that would have made most people run. She's believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And you want to tell me that my transformation is just marketing? You want to tell me that the life we've built together, the family we've made, the love that saved me, is all just a branding strategy? Tears were visible in his eyes now, but he didn't wipe them away. You want to call that marketing? Fine, call it whatever you want. But I know the truth. My daughter knows the truth. And the thousands of people who've come to me after shows, crying, telling me that my music gave them the courage to get help, they know the truth too. Joy seemed uncomfortable with the raw emotion on display. I didn't mean to suggest that your relationship with your daughter isn't genuine. Yes, you did, Jelly Roll cut her off. That's exactly what you suggested. You suggested that everything about me is calculated, that nothing is real, that even my love for my child is part of some elaborate brand strategy. And I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. Dead wrong. He sat back down, but his presence still dominated the room. You know what I find interesting about people like you, Joy? You've never had to fight for anything real. You've never had to claw your way out of a hole that you dug yourself. You've never had to look in the mirror and hate what you see, and then find the strength to change it anyway. So you don't believe it's possible. You think everyone who claims to have changed is lying because you can't imagine having the courage to change yourself. The observation was devastating in its directness. Joy's mouth opened and closed without sound. Let me tell you something about my past that I don't usually share, Jelly Roll continued. When I was at my lowest, when I was using every day and selling to support my habit, I had a gun in my mouth. I was ready to end it. The only thing that stopped me was the thought of my daughter growing up without a father, even a terrible one. The studio was absolutely silent. Even the cameras seemed to be holding their breath. That's not marketing, Joy. That's rock bottom. That's the moment when you realize you have to change or die. And I chose to change. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. It took years of work and failure and getting back up again. But I did it. And now I use my music to tell people that if I can do it, they can too. His voice rose with passionate conviction. Every person in every prison I visit, every addict I talk to, every kid who's heading down the wrong path, I tell them the same thing. You are not your worst mistake. You are not what you did yesterday. You have the power to become someone different. And that message isn't calculated, Joy. That message is the only thing that kept me alive long enough to be sitting here today. He looked around the studio, making eye contact with audience members who were openly crying. I see people out there who know exactly what I'm talking about, who have fought the same battles, who have lost people they love to the same demons. They didn't come here to see me get torn down by someone who's never walked a mile in our shoes. They came here because they believe in second chances, because they need to believe that change is possible. He turned back to Joy. What do you believe in, Joy? Besides controversy and ratings, what have you ever fought for? What have you ever overcome? What message do you send to the world besides skepticism and cynicism? The questions hung in the air like accusations. Joy seemed to shrink in her chair. I believe in asking tough questions, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. No, you don't. You believe in safe questions that make you look edgy. You believe in attacking people who can't fight back, who are trained to smile and take it because that's what celebrities are supposed to do. But I'm not a celebrity, Joy. I'm a survivor, and survivors fight back. Sarah Haynes finally spoke up. Jelly Roll, I think what Joy was trying to say? I know exactly what she was trying to say, Jelly Roll replied, his voice softening slightly as he acknowledged Sarah. She was trying to say that my story is too good to be true, that no one really changes that much, that underneath all the talk about redemption, I'm still the same drug dealer who used to poison his own community. He paused, letting the words settle. And you know what? Part of me agrees with her. Part of me still feels like that person. Part of me still carries the guilt of every bad decision I ever made. I've got friends who are dead because of drugs I sold. I've got a trail of broken relationships and disappointed people stretching back 20 years. That doesn't just disappear because I wrote some songs about it. His honesty seemed to catch even Joy off guard. But here's the thing, Joy. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something different in spite of it. It's about taking all that pain and shame and turning it into something that might actually help someone else. That's what I do every day. Not because it makes me feel better about myself, because it's the only way I know to make any of it mean something. He turned to look at the audience, and his voice took on a preacher's cadence. I've sat with mothers who lost their children to the same drugs I used to sell. I've looked them in the eye and told them what I did. I've asked for their forgiveness knowing I don't deserve it. And you know what most of them say? They say thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for trying to stop it from happening to someone else. Thank you for not pretending you're better than you are. Tears were streaming down several faces in the audience now. That's what redemption looks like, Joy. It's not pretty. It's not comfortable. It's not a marketing strategy. It's getting on your knees every day and asking for the strength to be better than you were yesterday. It's facing the people you hurt and owning what you did. It's using the worst parts of your story to maybe, just maybe, prevent someone else from writing the same one. He stood up again, and this time it was clear he was preparing to leave. I want to say something to everyone watching who's struggling right now, who's in the grip of addiction, who's locked up and feeling hopeless, who's made mistakes they think they can never come back from. His voice broke with emotion, but carried across the silent studio. You can change. I know it doesn't feel like it right now. I know the voices in your head are telling you that you're worthless, that you'll never be anything different, that you might as well give up. Those voices are lying. I'm living proof that they're lying. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. You'll fail more times than you succeed, But if you keep fighting, if you refuse to give up, you can become someone you never thought you could be. He looked at Joy one final time. That's the message I carry every day of my life. That's why I tell my story. Not for marketing, not for money, but because somewhere out there is someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's holding a gun the way I once did, trying to decide whether life is worth living. And if my music, my story, my willingness to be honest about where I came from can convince even one person to put that gun down, then everything I've been through was worth it. He wiped his eyes with the back of his tattooed hand. You ask me if I'm genuine. Here's my answer. I've been more honest with the world about my failures than most people are with their own families. I've talked about addiction, about crime, about the people I hurt, about the shame I carry every day. I've done it knowing that some people would never forgive me, that some doors would always be closed, that my past would follow me forever. His voice dropped to a near whisper that somehow filled the entire studio. That's not marketing joy. That's confession. That's penance. That's a man trying to make amends for the damage he's done by helping others avoid the same path. And if you can't see the difference between that and a branding strategy, then I feel sorry for you. Because you've clearly never known what it means to be broken and put yourself back together. He moved toward the edge of the set, then stopped. My mama always told me that hurt people hurt people. That's why I try not to take what you've said personally. I don't know what made you the way you are, what pain you're carrying that makes you need to tear others down. But I do know that attacking someone's redemption says a lot more about you than it does about them. He looked at the audience one final time. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for believing in second chances. Thank you for giving people like me a reason to keep fighting. I love you all. And with that, Jelly Roll walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a studio transformed. Women were crying openly. Men were wiping their eyes and pretending they weren't. The other hosts sat in stunned silence, clearly moved by what they had witnessed. Joy Behar remained at the table, looking smaller than she had at the beginning of the interview. Whether it was shame or embarrassment or something more complicated, only she knew. But the audience's silence spoke volumes. No applause for her tough questions. No validation for her skepticism. Just the echoing weight of a man who had bared his soul and challenged everyone watching to decide what they really believed about redemption. What had started as a promotional appearance had become something far more profound. A testament to the power of honesty. A rebuke of cynicism, a reminder that behind every comeback story is a